Welcome back, Scratchers. We now have our player exploding, but it would also be nice to be able to shoot our enemy planes and have them explode. So how do we get our bullets and our enemy planes to explode? Very similar process to what we did with our player. We're going to take our bullet and we want to determine if it is touching the enemy. So we can go ahead and ask if we are touching the blue 0. And if we are done with this bullet. Now we could also just let the bullet pass through a bunch of these and take them all out. That really makes more sense for maybe a power-up bullet that is more powerful, but our initial bullet probably just wanted to delete. And then remember that because things are happening, even though they seem to be happening all at once, we are really just processing them one at a time. We want to go ahead and add that wait with a 0-second delay before we delete the clone, so that it can also register in our blue 0 that we've been hit. On our blue 0, which is also a clone, we also will use the wait 0 seconds with an if test and the delete this clone. And here we're going to look for the sensing block, and we're going to sense that we are touching the, I believe it was large bullet. Then we can add this to right after touching or before touching P38. And basically we just do all these tests right after we've moved our plane. And there you can see both the plane and the bullet disappear. Now the next thing we might want to do is go ahead and add an explosion just like we did with our player. And for these planes I'm going to use the smaller explosion. If we look at the costumes, we see there are 6 frames to this animation, so it's 1 frame less than we had in our other one. I'm also going to add a new explosion sound that I created with JSFXR, be our explosion, and that will be the sound that we'll use. So just like with our big explosion, our first thing is we want to move. And the question is, where do we put this? And you might think, well, let's go ahead and put it at the blue 0. That makes sense. We move there. We are going to show up. So we want our looks. Go to that position. Show. Before we show, we want to make sure that we are wearing the right costume. We're going to switch that costume to the first one in our series. And then we can do our repeat. There's a total of 6 frames, so we'll view 5 repeats because we've only got 5 costume changes with 6 costumes. And then once we finish, we can go ahead and hide. And then the question is, what event should trigger this? So we create a new message. Let's just call this a small explosion, because we may reuse this for other things in the game. So whenever I receive a small explosion, I'm going to go to where the blue 0 is, switch that costume, show, under the next costume. Now if we go back to our blue 0, we can broadcast that message. And let's go ahead and try that. So you might not see it very clearly, but our explosion is actually appearing over here in the corner. You might be wondering, well, what's going on? Well, that is actually where the small explosion is currently drawn. And I can show you that right there. But that's weird. We told it to go to where the blue 0 is. And our blue 0s were blowing up all over the place. Well, let's go ahead and show where the blue 0 is. And look, there's the blue 0. So this is the original blue 0. Remember, all the ones that are coming down our screen are actually clones. So when we tell it to go to the blue 0, it's going to the original blue 0 space. If we want our explosion to appear elsewhere, we can't actually use this go to the sprite location, because it's going to go to the original sprite, not to the clone. Instead, we need some way of passing that information of where that explosion should happen. And that's where things get a little interesting we're going to come down into our variables. We can make a variable or we can make a list. We're going to actually have, there's actually two lists already created for us, explosion X and explosion Y. These are going to store coordinates for where the explosions are actually happening. So when we decide to destroy a blue zero, before we broadcast this message, we're going to add thing to explosion X and explosion Y. These are going to be the X and Y position that our explosion should happen. And we're going to get that X and Y position from this X position reporter block and Y position reporter block, which, if we're inside a clone script, is going to be the position of the clone. And only the clone knows its position. While the position of other things are kind of shared across the stage, clones are the only thing that know their position. So we have to take it from the clone, and we're going to put it into those two lists. And we can see that. I'll go back to my variables menu here, and go ahead and highlight both of these. If I shoot one of my enemies now, notice that we have X of 88 and Y of -5, X of 32, Y of 0. So we're actually adding to the list where we want those explosions to occur. Now if I stop the game, notice those explosions still stick around. So one of the things we really want to do is we want to make sure that list starts empty. So we're going to delete all of explosion X, delete all of explosion Y when we do the green flag. So they start as empty, and then as we shoot things, we're going to add where those explosions need to occur. Now, if we go back to our explosion, or if we are in our explosion, these are telling us, these positions tell us where we should begin. So instead of this go to blue 0, I need to go to an X and a Y position. And those are going to be determined by these lists. So we're actually just going to pull the first thing off of that list, go back to the variables. You can say item 1 of explosion X, the very first item in that list, and item 1 of explosion Y. That's going to grab us the X and Y position off the top of the list. And then once we have those, we don't want another explosion to appear there in that same spot. So then we're going to remove that first X and Y out of the list. Now if we do this, we'll see that small explosion appears where those planes were. And it pops into that list for just a moment and then almost immediately pulls it right back out of the list to set up where that explosion is occurring. And I can go ahead and hide these two by unclicking that. And now I have a much more satisfying game.